So I play a lot of D&D, and I've talked about the fact that I play a lot of D&D maybe once or twice on this channel, but I've never actually told a D&D story, which I think is just a shame. So that, combined with the fact that last night I went to my friends and I was like, hey, you guys want to hear a D&D story? And they're like, no, just put it on your channel and then we'll watch it there. Like, force us to watch it for views. And I'm like, okay. So anyways, all of this came together, and this is going to be my very first D&D story about a one-shot that I would like to call Family Feud. Now, I wasn't the one running this one-shot. One of my friends was, and he's a very experienced DM, and so going in, we knew that this was going to be a well-made campaign, or at least we thought it would be, until he admitted that he had the beginning figured out and the end figured out, but not the middle as much. And so we went in and we're like, okay, we're ready to do this. And all of our characters were very interesting. There was a Kenku who worshipped the sun and would always use this very deep voice whenever they talked about the sun. There was a bloodhunter who was just the epitome of edginess. Like, they were just so quiet all the time, and they just wielded these two flaming swords and just walked around everywhere with them doing this blood right thing to try and maximize their damage at all possible times. And then there was me. I was playing this simple human character whose entire character was essentially that they wanted to be a hero. They desperately wanted it more than anything else. They were a paladin, which meant they worshipped a god, and essentially what they believed is that they were chosen by that god to be a hero. They also had this little statue of a griffin that we'll get into later. But anyway, the setting opens up, and we all find ourselves in a nice little inn, as most things start. And we go down. We've been waiting for a day or two, and we go ahead and we're like, man, when's this guy that we need to get an item for? When's he gonna show up? He's gotta show up at some point. And just completely out of nowhere, without the door even creaking open, there he was. This guy in a US Army shirt, just sitting there, telling us about what he needed us to get. He said it was either like Marlin's eye or Merlin's eye or something like that, and that we had to get it in a few days or else consequences would happen. And so we were like, okay, simple enough. This guy seems a little bit off, but not necessarily evil per se. He just a little off, maybe hiding something or another, who knows. And so we go ahead and he says, I'll give you 1,000 gold if you find it. And we're like, okay, I guess so. I'm over here like, I just want to be a hero. It doesn't matter about the money. Meanwhile, the other two are like, wow, that's a lot of money. And I'm just like, all right, we're just going to go get this eye thing. And so we go ahead, we go set out for this extremely long time, just walking and walking and walking and getting absolutely nowhere. Until we finally do get somewhere, we get into these ruins, and our DM describes this black arch that's on the hill. And I'm immediately like, that's a portal. That's totally a portal. And everyone else is like, yeah, probably. And so we go up to the arch, the portal, and we go, and as we walk in, we see that the torches just get brighter each time each person walks in. One person walks in, it's a little brighter, and the next person a little brighter, and the last person just a bit brighter. And we go ahead and we walk down that corridor, and we keep walking and walking for about 15 minutes until we see this black, writhing mass, and we just look at it and we're like, I don't know if you want to go next to that thing. And then our brave Kenku, who's essentially a toddler, goes, hey, do you need any help over there? And the mass just doesn't respond. And I'm over here like, what are you doing? You don't just talk to a random black writhing mass that you see? Meanwhile, our bloodhunter's like resisting the urge to just go charging in, swords blazing at this thing. And so eventually we come up with the solution to toss a stone. Our Kenku goes ahead and casts light onto a stone and throws it in, and as we see it veer off to the side as if it hit some weird panel of glass or something. And now I, as the good adventurer hero whatever that I am, I'm like, I've got this all figured out. And so I go ahead and I just walk right on up and I put my hand through, and as I walk I start feeling just dizzy, I can't seem to get my bearings. Everything's just spinning. The floor is still, but everything just seems to be spinning, and it just rotates over, and then I'm sliding down towards the massive writhing darkness, and I'm like, man, wow, that was a fast campaign. I guess it all ends here or whatever, but we all slide into the massive darkness, and as you might imagine, that wasn't the end of this little one-shot. We go ahead and we go down, and suddenly we find ourselves in these ruins, the same ruins that we were in briefly before, but now they're a little more built up, a lot less dilapidated. And we kind of walk around, and there's this big old manor sort of thing. And as we walk towards it, we see this triangular piece of glass. And so, of course, our Kenku goes ahead, picks it up, starts looking through it, and finds that when you look through the glass, it looks even newer than it does now. There's essentially these three parts. There's the one that we were in previously where it was completely dilapidated. There's this one where it's kind of dilapidated, and then there's the one through the glass, which is almost not dilapidated at all. It's pretty much all intact. And so now I know something weird is going on. I just don't know what it is. And so our Kenku says, hey, maybe we should go ask some people what's going on so that we can get help. And I'm over here like, that's such a bad idea, because this whole manor is just getting off these complete horror movie vibes. You can just feel the evil energy like coming out of it. And I'm just like, I don't like this at all. But we see some figures, or we hear some figures in this little side house. And so our Kenku's like, I'm going to go look into it. And so I follow them, and we go ahead and we look in. And as we look through the glass, we see these figures that you can just barely make out in the glass. Their forms are just barely there, just moving, two figures. And I'm like, oh, this is bad news. And then our Kenku's like, I'm gonna go ask them for directions or something. And they literally run over to the door, open the door, and then get freaking punched in the face by a shadow. Because you don't just open the door to monsters. That's not something you should do in D&D, if anyone was wondering. You're not just supposed to waltz into places. So anyways, we go ahead, we start initiative, and now we're all off and fighting. I'm over here using all of these things like Guiding Bolt, I believe it was, and Guiding Bolt does 4d6 of damage. That's a fair amount. We're level 5. But you know what's an even fairer amount? When you get a nat 20, when you crit on that 4d6 radiant damage on that shadow, it is just so good. So I go ahead, I do that. I do, I think, like 72 damage, 76 damage to them. In one shot, I just snipe them through the window. Meanwhile, the other two are trying to deal with the other one. And then eventually I go ahead, I walk over, and then I steal that kill too. And I'm like, all right, guys, we need to not just go barging into places. This is obviously a bad idea. And so then we go ahead and we look at the manor, and as we look, we see this big tower, this big grandiose tower. And so our Kenku, who can fly because they have an item that lets them do that, looks at the tower and just flies up there. They're just like, I'm just gonna go fly up there. And so they fly up there. And as they fly up there, they look into the tower and they see this red pulsing light. And as they look at it, they have to roll a wisdom save, which they pass. And they're like, huh, that was weird, but nothing came of it. And I'm over here on the ground like, what do you see? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, can you just describe it? And they're like, I don't know a word for that. And so I'm like, oh, God, okay, these idiots. And so I call upon my great griffin, Fluffy the Eviscerator, whose first name I gave when I was 5 and second name I gave when I was like 13 in an edgy emo phase. And so I go ahead and call upon Fluffy the Eviscerator to take me up to this nice window so I can actually see what our Kenku is seeing, since he doesn't seem to be able to describe it for whatever reason. And so I go ahead and I look at it, and I'm like, yeah, that's a light. Having rolled a 3 on my perception check, I'm like, that's a light. You see, the word we use for this is a light. And he's like, but it's more than a light. It's like, it's going. And I'm like, it's a light, dude. It's a light. And so we bigger over this, and then I noticed that there's this big glass door, like at the top of the tower. And I'm like, huh, I'm pretty strong. I've got a decent strength score. And I got a club because I was thinking when I created this character, I want to be able to do pretty much every kind of damage. I want to be able to do bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. So I was like, I am so glad I have this great club to just use. And so I go and I'm like, all right, I'm going to break this door. And I go ahead and I ready it and I roll and I get a natural 20 on this. A natural 20. This is my second in close proximity. And I go and I hit it with all of my strength. And it doesn't crack. It doesn't do anything. But what does happen is it all reverberates back and the club goes flying into the distance from the force that I just imparted on it. And I'm like, God, that was my favorite great club. I got it from this big battle and now it's gone. And so then our Kenku's like, oh, don't worry, I'll get it. And so he body slams himself into the glass to get the momentum so he's able to more easily fly to get the great club, which he then delivers to me. Meanwhile, our bloodhunter was just standing at the door, just pretty much doing nothing. And so then we all go back down and we look at the base of the tower, and turns out at the base of this tower is this huge black door. And on this black door are these 2 words, Chisset and Chesset. And so we look at these for a while and we hear this like lullaby going and playing through, an incomplete lullaby. And we're like, all right, so this is the puzzle that the DM told us about, okay. And so I'm over here out of character, like, okay, so let's see, Chesset, Chisset, those are both like, CH and then vowel SSIT or whatever. So maybe since we used E and I, maybe the next one is O, so then maybe it's Chaucet, like Chesset, Chisset, Chaucet, something like that. And I can just see, I just barely glance like this little bit of, like, almost fear in my DM's eyes. I only realized it later, but at the time I just didn't think much of it. But we go ahead and we're like, all right, we'll figure this out later. There must be some way to find the actual solution. So then we go ahead and we decide that we're going to head into the manor. And because it's this group with these 2 idiots, actually, before we head into the manor, sorry, I can't miss the very best part. Before we head into the manor, our bloodhunter decides to get into a fight with the door. So the door doesn't have a handle or anything, by the way, it's just this big black door. And so our bloodhunter's like, I want to make a strength check to open the door. And our DM's like, okay, you can do that. And so he tries and he fails. And then he's like, okay, I want to intimidate the door. And the DM's like, okay, but it fails. And so he does that. And then he goes through all of these other things. He's like, I want to bargain with the door. And the DM's like, okay. And then he's like, I want to ram the door with all of my might. And so the DM's like, fine, whatever, do it. And so he rams the door with his right shoulder. And as he rams the door with his right shoulder, he pops it. He dislocates his shoulder because you just rammed your shoulder into this piece of stone. And so then our Kenku went ahead and it set it back for him. But yeah, I guess our bloodhunter had something really, really against doors, because this would continue. We go up to the mansion door, and our Kenku was going to go to the front door. There was not going to be any persuading him into going through a window or something, like something sensible. So we go up to the front door, and I go ahead and knock, and our bloodhunter glares at the door. And it just swings open. And I look around, and I'm very cautious. I'm like very concerned about just being ambushed by pretty much anything. And we go ahead and we investigate around. And as we investigate, we find that our little triangular piece of glass that shows the other world, you can actually put your hand through it and grab things out. Like you can grab food, which our Kenku did. He grabbed a nice rare steak, which our bloodhunter then proceeded to take his flaming swords and cook. These flaming swords which have blood on them because of the bloodhunter class, and then he ate his bloody, well-done steak, which is probably the most disgusting thing I've ever had happen in a D&D campaign. But then we just went on and investigating everything, and eventually we make our way into a small study. And the door slams shut. And my griffin's been following us around for this entire time, and I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen? Because we will be able to take it no matter what. But nothing happens. All we see is on the other side of on the side of the door that closed on us, that we can now see. We see this big mirror with just one triangular piece missing from it. And lo and behold, it's the piece that we hold in our hand. And so I'm very skeptical. I'm like, I don't want to lose this ability to see into the other dimension. I really think we should keep our piece of glass. But our Kenku's like, no. And he just goes and he just puts it back and he mends it, like a good character. And luckily enough, it actually works so that the entire mirror then becomes a portal that we can step through into that realm that we were seeing through the glass. Sadly enough, though, the griffin was too big to fit through the portal, and so we had to go on without him. We then ended up investigating a little more until we heard some screaming coming from downstairs. Me, being the good hero that I am, was like, we must go save them! Whatever's happening, they must be saved! And so I go ahead and I go down, and I see this man just screaming as he stands a little ways away from this big, writhing black mass with some red thing at the center of it. And so I go and I try to lasso him to bring him in close, but that fails. And then our Kenku decides to call upon the powers of his god to just do what they want to do. And so he pulls out this wand that essentially has a 1 in 100 chance of doing whatever the hell it wants. And by that I mean you roll a D100 and then it just does something. And so he goes ahead, takes it out, and just casts it at the black mass. And you know what he got? He got fireball. He literally lights the entire frickin' thing on fire, which also ends up burning the poor guy pretty much to a comatose state. As this happens, I rush over to the comatose guy. I'm like, oh my god, are you okay? I am so sorry. And I see that he's just dying, and so I stabilize him. And I pull him up and out of the room with the darkness. And I'm like, okay. It's gonna be fine, but you are such an idiot. And I just start going off at this Kenku because he just murdered a man for no reason. And as I'm lecturing him for minutes on end, I start to feel this hand grabbing at my arm, and I try to pry it off with a really good strength check, and it doesn't work. Like a 23 didn't work. and his arm is just stuck to mine, and I see that his eyes have just gone black and just have this substance oozing out of them. And then I just very quickly go from being like, how dare you, to just cut his arm off, just get it off me, get it off. And so eventually we manage to get the arm cut off. But the problem is that it wasn't just the arm that was animated, it was the entire thing. And so then the creature goes ahead and it grabs for our bloodhunter. And it starts dragging him towards the blackness, which we all know 1,000,000% would be a bad thing. And so we are now just desperately launching attacks at this stupid thing, trying just to get it to go down. Just attack after attack after attack after attack, really wishing that I had my griffin, because my griffin does so much damage but he got stuck on the other side of the mirror, which makes me so sad. But we're just launching attack after attack after attack after attack, and we're just desperately trying to take him out, and he gets within 5 feet. 5 feet of that blackness when we finally managed to take him out. And I was so stressed and just so... Because this entire character's thing was that they were a hero, right? And all of a sudden it had turned on them. Being a hero had quite literally almost killed one of their friends, and so the character had now gone from being this person that was always like cautioning, always like, no, don't do that, don't be an idiot, to just defeated. And so then we went ahead and we just looked around a little bit more. We went up because we heard some lullaby being sung. And so I go ahead and I carefully open the door about halfway, and I see a ghostly woman rocking a baby gently in her arms, and I'm like, okay, we can deal with this. And we get the last line of the poem, or of the lullaby, which is, I think, it's Chesset, Chisset, Chesset, or something like this. And so we get it. And I'm ready to just go down, just go to the tower, just be done. But the problem is that our bloodhunter decides to try and go up and touch the ghost. And as soon as he does, he takes 23 necrotic damage, which is a ton. He just gets blasted with energy and just, oh my god, he just takes so much damage. And it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so we drag him out of there. Fortunately, the ghost went back to being placid, like, after he removed his hand, but that was so bad. So incredibly bad. And so we drag him over to the tower, we whisper the word, it works, and then we go ahead and we climb the tower. But as we climb the tower, we see that there's a, let's see, we see that there's a ghost there, and this ghost we just see just walking around, and we recognize him, and he says as much, that his name is Mayorlyn, commonly misread as Merlin, and tells us the entire story about this item that we were supposed to retrieve, this eye of his, the Eye of Mayorlyn. And this eye had been corrupted by the darkness, that writhing mass that we had seen, and he had been trying to contain it. Unfortunately, part of his soul got stuck in this other realm, this realm that we were in right now, the one that's through the mirror, and he didn't even know where the rest of himself was. And so we talked to him for a while, and we get the idea that, yeah, okay, this thing is bad, like capital B-A-D, bad. We need to destroy it at all costs. And so we go ahead and we're like, we promise him to destroy it. We go ahead, we head back through the mirror, and we head up to the tower in the other realm. Use the same code word. And as we walk up the stairs, I go ahead and I lead. And as I walk and as I go up, I see that red eye, the Eye of Mayorlyn, the corrupted eye. And I see it, and my character fails their wisdom save. And they go over to it. And they reach out for it, and then they make another wisdom save, and they fail that wisdom save too. And now their hand's right over it. One of our allies tries to shoot an arrow to knock the box closed, but it just knocks it onto my hand. And I grab it. I grab the corrupted stone, and then I'm forced to fight my friends, which was interesting for like 5-ish rounds, or at least until they got me handcuffed so that I couldn't fight them anymore. And the second I was handcuffed, the influence of the eye just left me completely. I was freed. I was fine. Apparently it deemed me worthless at that point. And then my other friend, the bloodhunter, goes to try and just pick up the rock and put the box over it. But as he picks it up, same thing happens. He fails his wisdom save, and now we have to fight him. And so we just keep fighting and fighting and fighting each other. And we fight and we fight. And finally, we manage to get this thing into its box. And it was finally done. But then, as we get it into the box, we hear this cracking noise. And we look around, and it's not the glass door, and it's not the floor, and we just don't know what it is. So we get out of the tower, but then we look up, and we see the entire sky splintering into pieces. And then a giant tendril of blackness, and then another, and then another, and then just millions of them spiraling from the sky. And then a giant tidal wave of blackness just washed over all of us. And then we were in the darkness for a while. Don't know how long. And eventually, light came back. And then we were in the original ruins. The ones that were ruined. The ones that were definitely ruined. And as we get out, the only thing that's on my character's mind is destroying the stone. But the problem is, whenever you look at the stone, it just takes you over. But we're determined now to destroy the thing so that it can't get into the hands of anyone else. So we go and we attack it. And our bloodhunter gets possessed again. And as does our Kenku gets possessed, because he went and he's like, I'm the only one that hasn't been possessed. I must be immune. And so he goes. And of course, he gets possessed right off the bat. And so then but now we're focusing our attacks on the stone. Before we had focused our attacks on each other, now we actually had the concrete goal of destroying this thing. And so we go and we slash and we hack and we use spells and we do everything in our absolute power. My griffin comes in. And my griffin comes in for this last hit. He goes ahead and he pecks it, and it's so cracked. It's so broken. And then it comes to the stone's turn. And it comes to the turn of our bloodhunter, who's currently holding it and currently under its possession. And he fails a save, charisma save. And as he fails that save, he teleports. And it was only because of metagaming that we knew what happened next. Because he teleported and he went to that same guy in that US Army shirt, the same guy that had employed us at the beginning. Teleported right to him. Held out, had the stone, had control for once. And then the guy told him to give it to him. And our bloodhunter said no. Shared his pain with him, this thing bloodhunters can do where their health becomes the same, to about 14. And then his turn ended, and the turn of the guy that employed us began. And all he said was one word: die. And then our bloodhunter died. And then the stone was in the possession of the man that wanted it the most. The man that our DM told us right after was the head of the evil in the campaign. And so, in that way, our little group of adventurers, our little feuding family, of which my character was the mom and the other two were the little kids, one who was desperate to explore and have fun and be nice to everyone, our Kenku, and the other who just wanted to murder our bloodhunter. Not only was the bloodhunter dead, but we had failed to save anyone, and quite possibly doomed an entire world. Anyways, as our DM said, his stories always have fantastic and good endings. Happy endings, happy endings. But, yeah, that's the end of it. Thanks for listening. I've been the Coaster Key. If you enjoyed this, go ahead and like the video. If you've had any crazy D&D stories, go ahead and comment them down below. Always amazing and fun to read your guys' comments. And if you want more of these stories, not only like, but subscribe, because then you'll be able to see if they do come out. And then you'll be able to go ahead and catch up with them. So, anyways, I've been the Coaster Key, and I hope that you guys soar high and enjoy your ride of life. Bye!